Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Living Astrology with Janet Hickox. Grab your cup of coffee or your tea, sit back, and let's chat about what is happening up in the stars above today, the day just before the full moon. And isn't it amazing how quickly that came upon us? Because it seems like we were just talking about the new moon here a day or so ago, right? Time seems to fly when we're having fun. And indeed, that is what we will be chatting about this morning, because tomorrow's new or full moon, occurs at 3:46 a.m. my time. That means about 6:46 a.m. for those of you on the East Coast. So that'll be before we come on air to chat about it. So I thought we would talk about it today and talk about the different connections it's making. And also because the moon just moved out of Libra early in the morning, this morning, and into the sign of Scorpio, we could talk a little bit about what Scorpio represents in an astrology chart, and also then how that affects the new moon or the full moon. Why do I keep saying new moon? How that affects the full moon. And also on top of that, we have a very fun sort of intuitive, spiritually inclined transit occurring concurrently with the full moon. But even really beginning today as it's building up to tomorrow, and that is Mercury in a sextile to Neptune. And this is a very powerful coming together of two planets, one that represents the mind and speech, and the other one that represents spirituality. And you can see where that might take us into more intuitive territory, where we're more inclined to hear from more spiritual means, or from our inner voices. So I'm going to take a quick look over here at at not Facebook, at YouTube, just to see if I can tell where I am and see who's with me this morning. There I am. And I'm going to mute that. Good morning, Elisa and Debbie Tibbetts-Tumiel. I hope you're doing well and your daughter is doing well. Phantom Chroma, good morning. Allison, good morning to you. Mimi, good morning. And Amy Energy, good morning. Is that Amy Moore, or is that a different Amy this morning? If so, you're welcome to be here. And thank you, everybody, for joining me here this morning. Allison, I did get your question, and I'm not sure I have time today to deal with that in context of the morning show, but I will answer your question for you later. And then, since her question was a human design question, I think it might be worth our talking about once we get through the full moon, and I have more space to talk about something like that. So thank you for your question, and I'll look forward to answering that for you a little bit later. So today, of course, is the day just before the full moon. So we're getting ready to reach to that culmination point with the moon in Scorpio and the sun in Taurus. So you know how we've been talking about oppositions, and we've been talking about the need this week to balance the great masculine and the great feminine energies within us, and that all of the transits even seem to be building us up to that. Well, here we have the aspect, or the aspect pattern between planets that really causes us to try to bring that balance and that harmony. And that's the opposition. And a full moon is exactly that, an opposition between the sun in one sign and the moon in the opposite sign. And so we have the sun in Taurus, so the moon is in Scorpio. Now, today, the moon in Scorpio is going to find itself in a square to Saturn. It's already that right now. And later on in the day, it will find itself in an opposition to the planet Uranus. Yay, a day of fun. So let's talk about what the energy of Scorpio brings us, and then we'll dig in a little bit deeper to those transits. And then I'll transition over to the full moon, and we'll talk about that. So when we have the moon in Scorpio, there are several main areas that we focus our energy in. And remember, the moon represents the emotional field, our soul, our connection to each other, even in some cases, the people, power to the people. And the moon in Scorpio represents change. It is a very transformational kind of energy. It almost forces us into those changes that we maybe have been hesitant or reticent to make in our lives. And so Scorpio moon comes along and pushes us, gives us that emotional wherewithal to do that. It is also an energy of crisis. And when I say that, it's not that Scorpio is a crisis-oriented sign. It's not that it causes crisis, but it is a sign that has skills in dealing with crisis. So we often see these things that come up within us during a Scorpio any planet in Scorpio, particularly the moon, though, gives us that connection to the emotions we feel, the fear we might feel in a crisis. And then, of course, the next thing is self-mastery. So how do we deal with that? How do we rise to the occasion once that fear is triggered or once that crisis is out there? And how do we manage that within ourselves? And also, the sign of Scorpio represents our ability to procreate. It has a lot to do with sex and that whole death and rebirth kind of energy and soulmate energy, right? That feeling that we have inside of us that there's someone out there special just for us. Often Scorpio is feeling that soulmate energy. And then as well, there's a financial aspect to Scorpio, as the second house in the astrology chart is ruled by Taurus. The sun is in Taurus. So we have our own personal way of creating finances happening here as well. On the opposite side, the eighth house, ruled by Scorpio, is about other people's money. It is about the financial partnerships that we make. It is money that comes in from, I call it OPM, other people's money, but it's money that comes from different areas, like your spouse's, your wills or legacies or inheritances, money that comes from taxes and all that kind of thing, or taxes that you have to pay because it's a two-way door, right? It could be money that's going out as well as money that's coming back in. And as well, power struggles. I already saw a power struggle this morning in the news, which I thought was kind of funny. Apparently, the Arizona State University students have a department that is an epidemiology department or something, and they're charting the incidences of the COVID-19 and all of that. And the US government, the federal government, the White House specifically is stepping in and saying, we're not going to give you those numbers anymore because we don't want you to model numbers anymore. They don't want to know how big the problem is, or they don't want us to know how big the problem is. So now we have this power struggle that is being concocted between the powers that be over here and the need for the people to have information. So it's kind of an interesting power struggle. First thing this morning, first news thing I saw. So power struggles, a part of the full moon. We're probably going to hear about this kind of thing going on for the next couple of days. Now, if we look deeper into each of these categories, when we look at the idea of power and powerlessness, right? So in any word that I could come up with here, we would also have the potential for the more, for the low expression or the low frequency and the higher frequency. So power and all of its representations in the positive, but also power and powerlessness in its lowest. So with power, we may have secrets, we may have politics, right? We're going to hear politics. We're going to see the psychology that's going on between peoples or in our own selves. We're going to be more aware of what other people's motives are, or what the needs of other people are. It's almost like Scorpio sometimes. I always think of Scorpio as having that window into the real you, right? Scorpio energy allows us to either see into the depths of something more easily, or it allows us, others, to see into us more easily. And so there are times, I think, that we feel uncomfortable when Scorpio energy comes up, because it's almost like that, the emperor has no clothes on kind of thing. And we realize, oh, wow, all of our guards are down, etc., and other people can see into us. Now, when we talk about power, we can also talk about misuse of power, where we have energies like revenge and competition and jealousy and possessiveness that are all also the more negative traits of Scorpio. Destructive urges, where we just want to throw everything out and start over again. Abandonment issues, guilt and suspicion, also some of the more negative frequencies dealing with power and the misuse of power or powerlessness. But one of the high sides of Scorpionic energy, especially when we have a full moon in Scorpio, is the ability to transform The transformational energy is huge. It is about letting go of the old baggage, all of the old stuff that's been holding you down, that's holding you back, and allowing change to take place in your life. This is also a great time to go deep within and do some forgiveness work, whether that's you having to work on forgiving someone else who you felt has wronged you, or self forgiveness. Forgiveness is a huge opportunity for us at this point in time, and restoration. Thinking of Scorpio, it's one of the powerful water signs, and the water signs are very much indicated in restoring and renewing and rebuilding and restructuring. Not maybe the structuring, but the renewal of something, and water's ability to transform things. So we have that transformational power. What do you want to transform in your life? What do you want to forgive yourself or others for? And now being the time to make that transformation. Now, we also talked about Scorpio in terms of crisis management and crisis energy. So here's where we see sometimes that risky, power grabbing sort of energy that comes up between countries, sometimes even within relationships where, we may be feeding off each other's more negative sides and creating power struggles within the relationship. This is where we might find compulsions, OCD, obsessions and compulsions, where there is intense behaviors and intense interactions between you and other people, or even within yourself, right? Even within yourself, where we feel like we're sort of on an edge. And I kind of feel like that's how the world is a little bit looking like right now, where we're on an edge, and either we're going to tip off and we're going to be in the soup, so to speak, and going down a far darker path than one that we thought we might be leading down, or we may tip over to the other direction and things will smooth out and become better and easier. And a lot of that has to do with, sorry, my eyes are itching me this morning. A lot of that has to do with how we within ourselves greet this energy and how we deal with this energy. If you're on an edge, psychologically or emotionally, do you do things that empower yourself to come through that, or do you blop that out there in the outer world on others, projecting it outward? So this is a grand opportunity for us to really call in our own stuff and process through it. Scorpio is the best sign of processing these emotional hurts and wounds, and dealing with the depth, what's going on underneath it all. It looks like one thing on the surface, but if you look underneath it, like an iceberg, there's a whole lot more going on, and it has more to do with you and what you're doing than it has to do with what others are doing or what the world is doing. So there's depth here. There's commitment here in this sign, a very persevering. This is a fixed sign. When we look at the modality, it's fixed. It stays its course. It perseveres. And it is very enduring energy. And that means that also it might endure with grievances and obsessions and compulsions, or emotional wounds, as opposed to the more positive expression of those things. So we'll have to work through what's going on with us in those kinds of terms. Good versus evil, another great Scorpio sort of energy, where we tend to compartmentalize or categorize things as good or evil. And it can play into that whole duality on the planet, or increasing that polarity on the planet, rather than just seeing them as two sides of the same coin, right? Same thing, one side up, it's one thing, other side up, it's another thing, but you can't have the coin without both sides. So in terms of bonding, coming together in partnership, this is the energy of sex, and this is the energy of soulmates. This is the energy of that deep emotional connection that we have to one another, or that we want with one another. I think sometimes Scorpions out there sometimes hold these very powerful emotions within them, and they're almost frightening in how powerful they are, whether it's the jealousy, the revenge, the possessiveness, the love, the adoration of something or someone. And so they hold it very deeply within them rather than expressing it. So sometimes that Scorpio energy comes out in a rush or comes out in a madness, and at other times it's withheld, and people take get the feeling that this person is not emotional. But nothing could be further from the truth. There's a deep well of emotion going on here. It's allowing that emotion a channel to be able to be expressed positively. That's important to be able to process even the more negative feelings and expression of emotions that you're having in positive ways rather than in the more negative expressions of this energy. And of course, OPM, other people's money, where we have loans and grants and taxes and debts. Wills and inheritances are covered by Scorpio, as well as contracts, specifically in business. Not so much the marriage contracts, that's more Libra territory, but the contracts between businesses or between business partners, that type of thing. So now we know and understand a little bit more about Scorpio energy. I want to go over here to the YouTube channel, see who's out here. Marissa, good morning to you. Debbie Hedden, good morning. J-Lo, good morning. Deborah Johnson, loving the rain here in the South Okanagan. And it's raining here too. We had thunder and lightning last night too. That was kind of fun. We hardly ever have that. Amy Moore, okay, that's wanted to make sure. And Augustina, good morning to you. Great to see you with us. And Deborah Johnson says, let the truth be known. Go students. Mimi, yes, Deborah, quest for truth, indeed. Kamal, good morning to you. Ursula, good morning. Natasha, great to see you. She says, good, happy full moon of letting go of the unnecessary, unneeded, even though we think we still want it. I pray for grace and ease with this dance. Indeed, that's the best thing that we can do for this, really. And Marissa, that describes the Scorpio I know pretty well. I like the word intense. Indeed, intense. And it's interesting because I can almost always tell if I'm in the presence of a powerful Scorpio, whether they have the sun placement or the moon is powerful, or they have a rising sign or a lot of planets in Scorpio, or especially if they have moon or Pluto in Scorpio, which are not moon, Mars or Pluto in Scorpio, which are the co-rulers, because there's this intensity that I almost want to recoil from. I find myself sometimes wanting to push back from them, that intensity is written all around them in their aura and in their personage. And so right, it's like, oh, no, too much. So when you're feeling that with someone, good morning, Terry. Kamal says, good morning, Terry. And when you're feeling that with someone, it's possible maybe that you're reacting to the Scorpio part of them, or the fact that they are Scorpio. I love doing this, by the way. I love taking characters on television. My husband will tell you, sometimes I just blurt out, oh, that's a Scorpio. Oh, that's a generator. Oh, that's a reflector. And when I'm watching shows, because I'll recognize the traits in those people and how they're expressing it. Karen Brackett, new here, loving your teaching ability. Well, thank you, Karen, and we're so glad to have you joining us as well. Welcome. Marissa said, yep, that's it, indeed. And Sue says, egads, I have Saturn in Scorpio. Saturn in Scorpio. So Scorpio is I'm going to hold on that for a minute, Sue, but I bet you're going to recognize some things here in a few moments when we talk about Saturn's play in the game today, and also Uranus's play in the game. And then when I take all of this and transition over to the full moon in Scorpio, and we talk about what's coming up through that. And so I don't see any other questions for the moment. So let's go back over here and start chatting then about the full moon itself. No, before I do that, let's talk about the square to Saturn this morning, because I think that's the energy that's most dominant right this minute, and likely going to take us for the next few hours. So whenever we have the moon in a square in particular to the planet Saturn, we end up feeling a little bit depressed, or like we feel low, or we're tired, maybe more lethargic than normal, like we just don't want to get out of bed, or I just don't want to go clean that kitchen or get the laundry started or do anything of real importance. And we may even feel a little bit low, like melancholy or depressed. Now, I want you to remember that anything to do with the moon, this connection to Saturn, or any connection it makes, moves quickly, because the moon moves quickly. So while you may be feeling that low energy this morning, or you may feel that, feeling like, am I depressed, or is this just melancholic? Then just understand that's going to move on, right? It's not going to stay there and last for long. Another alternative feeling sometimes people get when the moon is in a square to Saturn is that feeling of loneliness or being out of touch with others. And I think that may be exacerbated right now with this, with a lot of people still in sort of a quarantine status or staying home, staying apart from family members. And if you're a single person and you're having to stay at home and not, entertain your friends or be in your social circles, that you can feel lonely. But again, this is only a mood. This is a mood and it too shall pass. And if so, reach out with your phone to connect via Messenger or Zoom or any of the social platforms now that we have that we can connect with one another, because there's really no need to wait, feeling the loneliness isn't the problem, right? Feeling like that isn't a problem because it's really just that mood and it's going to pass. But it might be our feeling that it's true, right? That we are lonely, or are really taking that to the nth degree and running with that, and then taking that to mean that we're not worthy, or that we're not worthy of love, or I never get to be around the people I love, kind of thing. So we don't want to run away with this energy today. We just want to go, I see that, I feel that, and it's going to pass, because it will. It's a mood and it's fleeting. Fleeting as in it may last just an hour or two and then be on its merry way. So the best thing to do is to watch what your thoughts are focusing on during this period of time. Are your thoughts focused in that negative? Are you dwelling on the past? Are you dwelling on what it is that you don't have? Or are you putting your focus on what you desire, or what maybe can come in the future, or what you have? Right? What is here in the moment? What do I have? What people are around me? What is in my life right now that I can really take and be thankful for, and host, those feelings, instead of dwelling my thoughts on those more negative feelings. So again, that is quick this morning and it will move on. But I think with the moon in Scorpio, it makes it a little more intense. There's a little more passion maybe behind those feelings. And you may be tempted to believe that this is, a depression, and literally it should be just fleeting this morning. Now, what happens this afternoon is a little more interesting, because we have an opposition then, because remember, Uranus is in Taurus, and the moon will come into an opposition to the planet Uranus. Now, remember, oppositions seek balance, right? Because these energies are pulling in opposite directions. And what they really need to be able to do is to come together more equally. And with an opposition to Uranus, we may be more emotionally excitable, right? Given to more of that impulsive behavior, being more rebellious, maybe contrarian. That's a word I always seem to forget to use with Uranus, because sometimes Uranus will have us being contrary. We'll just say the opposite or do the opposite just because, right? Just because, right? That's what's happening here today. We might feel edgy and upset, but for no apparent reason. Maybe we're, relating back to our feelings in the morning that came up with Saturn. So just watch how it is that you're being. If you're with other people, make sure you're watching how you're being with those people, that you're not talking from that contrarian place, that you're not spoiling for a fight, that you're not purposely evoking a power struggle with someone over things. This could be really good energy if it's time to clear the air. But again, you want to do that with an ease and a grace, so that you're not hurting each other's feelings or setting yourself up for further problems in your relationships, because relationships can be tricky today because of that edginess, right? But this is also good energy for moving forward into a creative process. Um, it isn't good for making big decisions. Let's say, don't make big decisions today. Just don't do it, right? Because you may leap to conclusions about something that is going on in your life, but without any kind of clarity. All it is impulse, and making that change as it spontaneously arises can really put you in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong people, and no opportunities, because you're doing things too quickly, or without really sitting with that energy for a while before you make those big decisions. Okay, so contrarian energy, you may feel edgy and upset with no real reason. Relationships may be where this plays out, and that can make things a little tricky. So watch what you're saying, how you're saying it. Don't do anything of huge import today, perhaps waiting until after the full moon even, to make sure we don't have some of that more volatile energy with us. But there is a high side to all of these energies too, because this can help you crunch through or break through to new places in your life. If you've come to a plateau and you've been sitting at that plateau for a while, especially generators and manifesting generators, if you've had a reading with me, you know what I mean by that plateau, where it's like the energy kind of just stops and it sits there and doesn't really go anywhere. This may be an impulsive sort of energy that pushes out away from that plateau, and you might be able to see the beginning of something new happening, but just don't do things impulsively. That's the problem, right? Impulsively doing things can make problems, where just understanding that this is maybe creating an opening for you at some other point in the future. Okay, wow, lots of comments since I was here last. Deb, Amy says, I want to watch TV with you. Sounds like fun. It is funny, except my husband doesn't really understand what I'm talking about, but I just like, oh my gosh, that's such a thing. And you know what else is interesting when you watch television or you watch like lately, it seems like there are a lot of shows that are sort of walking that edge between reality and magical sort of things, but magical reality, maybe I want to say. Like I got into this show last night called The Other Room. I think is what it was called. And it was where, walking through a doorway entered you into some alternate universe. And I've got a couple of shows like that I've been seeing, and I can't help but wonder about things like the world and the way it looks right now, and how we're just on this edge of this age of Aquarius, and how that we're really just at this doorway where we could just walk through this doorway into a whole new world, a whole new way of being. But is the past going to hold us and chain us to that patriarchy or to that old masculine energy that also needs to move up? And just so many things that go through my mind, and then you see it in your shows that are on TV, and it just makes me go, wow. Okay, so we also have Natasha sees Scorpio emotional energy like a desert. We think they're dry, then they let the emotions go like the desert floods. Yeah, that's true. And then they need to go and process, right? The deserts are never really lifeless and barren. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on under the surface, right? Life goes under and into the earth in those hot climates and then emerges in the dark or the full moon. You see life is really full in those deserts. Deb Johnson knows a few Scorpios, and they're male and all powerful and intense indeed. And the women Scorpios are also intense as well. Marissa says, my kid woke up mad at me from a dream. It took him a couple of hours to shake the feeling. I just rode that wave and waited it out. Good for you, Marissa. And likely then there is something going on with your child where they're processing some kind of anger, and you're just the stand-in, right? You're the whipping girl, if you will, at the moment for that, your child to go through that feeling. And Marissa, also, my sister and SIL are Scorpios. To my knowledge, those are the only ones I know. I'm mostly surrounded by Leos, sprinkled with a couple of Sagittarius and Aquarius. Isn't that kind of fun to look at your life and see who is around you? Like I have a ton of Taurus, a ton of Libra people around me. And then that causes me to look at my chart and go, well, why would I attract that? Well, my Venus is in Taurus, so that makes sense. And I have literally nothing in Libra. Well, I do have the part of fortune in Libra, but Libra's on my 4th house of home and family. So it's possible that there's something about balancing home life and work life, maybe, that Libra's helped me to do. I'm not sure. Okay. Natasha, yes, I finally can do new phone, new abilities. Yay, as my old phone wouldn't let me do anything with Google. It's amazing what's attached to Google. Indeed, even YouTube now is attached to Google. It is a Google company now. Marissa, my natal Uranus is in Scorpio, and that explains so much. Sometimes the contrarian force is strong without provocation, and I couldn't figure out why. Now you know why, and it has a purpose. It's to allow you to see things from a different perspective. What if, it's like playing the devil's advocate. You know how I don't know, have any of you ever had to go to a debate class in college or even in high school, and your teacher will have you take the opposite point of view. So if you're debating gun control, let's say, that's because that's a hot button one. And if you are anti-guns, then that the teacher would put you on the pro-gun side. So you have to argue for guns instead of against them. And it's an interesting way to turn the perspective upside down and to be able to see things from a different point of view. And that could really help us if we were all sort of, maybe that's what this energy will help us do, is to get into the ability to see things from the other side. Okay, Ursula says, I have Venus conjunct Neptune in house 2, very highly spiritual. I bet you the things that you buy are all about spirituality, books or trips to spiritual places or spiritual icons or statues or those kinds of things. And that's kind of a cool thing to do. Ursula's got something, oh, they're in Scorpio. Ooh, very cool. J-Lo, yes, I'm having that where 2 of my girls had a dream. One is a Leo, one is a Scorpio. Oh, shoot, my other kids will be calling. I have 3 Scorpio girls and my grandson. My daughter managed to have 4 kids and all 4 of them Scorpio. Yikes. Ursula says, is it often true that most Scorpios work better together relationally? If they can get in sync, yes. Often people that are in the same sign will get along because they're cut from the same cloth, but it also can be a very narrowed relationship. So they want to be careful that they, don't come together so tightly that they exclude other people. Have you ever been around a couple where it feels like, no one else can enter into that relationship or no one else is there in the room? It's just the 2 of them. And that can become very, very narrow. So that would be my only concern with the Scorpio, that they get so intensely into that soulmate possible relationship that they are, they're just totally oblivious that there's anything in that outer world or any other people in their world. So an interesting dilemma that sign together with another sign like that could mean. It would be awesome if one had the sun in Scorpio while the other had the rising sign in Scorpio, maybe. Lots of different combinations there, but because there's so much to a chart, it's hard to say just 2 sun signs together would get along or not. If there's just so much more depth and layers in those in a chart. So you got to look at lots of different things, particularly in a masculine feminine relationship, a male female. You got to look at the Mars and the Mars of the woman's chart, the Venus in the man's chart, and see how they come together. Same thing with any relationships, though. Mars and Venus kind of tell you how that relationship is going to move and flow. So we look at that. Okay, are you guys ready to go to the full moon now? So the full moon, so we set the stage by talking about all of the things that are possible with Scorpio energy being where the moon is. And this is a powerful full moon. This is the 3rd of 3 super moons. And that means that moon is closer to the Earth. Last month was the closest approach that the moon would make to the Earth on her journey around. This is the 2nd most close to the Earth. And so that moon is going to look very big. Its effect on our bodies is going to be very powerful because our bodies are mostly water, and the moon rules the tides, right? The tides of our emotions, the tides of our feelings and the tides of the things that are happening here on the planet are very much tied with that moon. And a Scorpio moon then is going to take us into some difficult energy, perhaps, that we'll have to move through. So let's first talk about what is a full moon. Well, astronomically, a full moon is when the sun and the moon are in an opposition to one another. Earth in the middle, sun on one side, moon on the other side. So from our vantage point, we see this fully illuminated moon. And it is a moon then that we can expect to create some exposure, to expose those things that are hidden, those things that lie hidden in the dark. If you look out if you have clear weather on a full moon night, you can literally almost see details on things, even where without the full moon, you don't see much of anything. You might see the outline of things, but the full moon really illuminates that which has been in the dark. It is often a time of culmination where projects or things that we've been working on come to an end point. The promise of fulfillment, that is what the full moon really is all about. The promise that things will come into their fullness, right? The revelation energy, the energy of that aha or epiphany, the thing that comes up that helps you solve that problem or move in that direction, those ahas and things like that, right? Even in the dream state, which some of you who are talking about it's interesting that it's your children having these kind of dreams, where they're coming to some form of completion with maybe something that's been bothering them. We really, if you think about all the things that have gone on here in the last couple of months with the coronavirus and how it affected schools and how that affects our children, they were sort of forced through the eye of the needle, right? Their social world has been cut off. Their ability to be with one another in a classroom and in a learning atmosphere with recesses and all of the social things, the games, right? The sporting events and all these things. Then there is the adults out in the world who are reacting, some with very fearful, information, and just even our own fear about, am I going to get the virus? Are we safe? Blah, blah, blah. And our kids are absorbing all of this. So it's pretty natural, I think, that they would play with that fear in their dreams, because it's harder for kids to express the angst that they may be feeling about all the things that are going on right now. What does this mean for our future? And even though they may not be able to articulate that fear, or you look at them and you see that they seem to be doing fine on a subconscious level, this has got to be playing in their mind. So of course that the dream is a safe place for that. The dream state is a safer place for that to be playing out. So while we are dealing then with this particular full moon, we are looking at the sun in Taurus and the moon over here in Scorpio. So this is all about balancing what is yours versus what is mine, right? When we're talking the sun in Taurus, it is me, it's mine, my possessions, my values, and my money, etc. But when we talk about Scorpio, Scorpio is a sign, it's the ruler of the 8th house in an astrology chart. So it's a merging house. It is merging what's mine into what's yours and ultimately into what's ours. So we may have to change or transform some of the things that we think about in our lives that are solid. And maybe we have to work more with what's solid and formed on one end, but what's not solid and formed on the other end. So we may actually have to really kind of come into a sort of transformational state where we allow change to happen, where we, instead of getting caught in between these two fixed signs, where we sort of allow some change to happen gradually, perhaps through a process of growth and expansion. But also, if it's been some place where we've been hesitant to bring a completion, or where we've hesitated to transform, that may be taken out of our hands as the universe pushes us into that transformational state. Also, when we're dealing with the full moon across these two signs, we're dealing with complexity on one end. That would be the more Scorpio end, seeing the complexities and the interactions and the webs of life and the interweaving of that. I was doing some shamanic astrology study yesterday, and one of the icons of a Scorpio feminine model in the shamanic astrology is Spider Woman. And a Spider Woman is a Native American. We see her sometimes. We get Spider Woman in the goddess deck, and we also see Spider in the animal deck, where that's very Scorpio energy, with the interweaving of the stories and the complexity of all of our relations, and how the web of life is all interrelated, and how we can't tease one. There isn't any point where one is outside of the whole, right? You might think that you're outside of the whole, but you're really woven into the fabric of life and into the fabric of the cosmos and the universe. So Scorpio represents that complexity, while on the other hand, the sun in Taurus represents simplicity, right? The more comfort kind of energies, the simple smelling of a candle, the simple touch of someone, comforting you, the simple feeling of soft fabrics on our body, smells, seeing things, beauty, just those comfortable things, where Scorpio is also dealing with the more intangible objects like spirituality and the unseen world, where Taurus is very much more comfortable with the physical manifestation. If I can see it, taste it, touch it, it exists. And Scorpio is at that other aspect. So we're bringing the two, right? This is opposition. We have to bring these two into balance. We have on one hand with Scorpio energy, all of the mysteries of life, all of the untangible, mysterious things that happen, all of those secret things, the conspiracy theories, all of the things that are in the dark are scorpionic. And in the moon may shine some light on some of that for us. And then with the sun over here in Taurus, is it real, right? Is it real? And if it's real, then it exists. So one side is more magical realism, while the other side is more real physical realism, but they don't exist separately, right? They're all encompassed in this zodiac wheel here. So they're all energies that exist, and they are needing to be merged. And Scorpio is a great sign for merging this. During the full moon itself, we may need to learn how to balance our needs and desires against the needs and desires of the other people in our lives. How do we balance it's going on right now, sort of in our worlds, right? Where we're needing to balance the safety and the health of the public versus the need to get people back to work and get the economy going again. So we have these two different competing, they seemingly pulling in different directions. So we have to find a way to bring those directions closer together and be able to do both, right? How can we do both? And that's happening also in your own personal life, where you may need to find where you're being pulled in two opposite directions and bring that together in some way, in some kind of a balance. Material growth versus spiritual growth, right? Taurus, the sun, Taurus rules our material world, our financial world, and Scorpio rules more of the spiritual world, right? The unseen realm. And I think in a full moon like this, we see that the veil is very thin, right? This is a moon that's in Scorpio and is exactly opposite of where we are at Halloween time, where where the sun is in Scorpio and the moon is in Taurus, right? So the full moon in October or in Scorpio is always at that other end, and where we are now. So here we're having to bring in more of that spiritual component and blending that spiritual growth here in the physical realm on the planet. And so the moon gives us this sort of symbology of bringing things into fullness or illumination, right? The symbol of the moon in the sky and its bright light illuminating something that has been in the dark, where secrets are exposed, where the hidden is exposed, where hidden agendas and the psychology is exposed. And it is in that exposure where we can process those things, where we can work with those things, and where we can move toward the ultimate in scorpionic energy, which is transfiguration, right? That movement from the eagle to the phoenix, and that magical transformation that happens in death and rebirth. So we have a very powerful full moon occurring, like I said, tomorrow. This is, by the way, for those of you who like the numbers, this is occurring at 17 degrees, 20 minutes of the sign of Scorpio and Taurus. If you find that axis in your chart, you'll know what house this is happening in your chart, and then what area of your life where that light might be shining very brightly for you, where spiritual awakening is happening, where you have to balance that spiritual and that physical world. So finding that in your chart. In fact, let's just Let's do a sample here. First, let me go back and see if there are any comments. Um, my dreams have picked up on the last couple of nights. Karen Brackett says, wow, that yes, that tugging for balance. I'm Libra, frustrating living with an 85-year-old Scorpio dad right now. I bet. And he's feeling it, no doubt, right? Um, 85 years old. Does that mean he might have experienced the same thing with the Spanish flu? That would have been probably that would be before he was born. So no, likely he didn't experience that, but maybe this is triggering for him memories of the Depression and things like that. So maybe there's some ill at ease feelings he has about that or fears around that. Um, and I think that just calls for us to be more self-loving and also more nurturing of ourselves so that we can get through having to deal with somebody like that in our lives. Marissa, my sister, describes herself as a human lie detector. She can tell when someone is outright lying or omitting something, and it's her intuition that tells her. Ooh, I'd love to see her human design chart because likely that is one of the channels in human design that has that. I call it the bullshit meter. And often that can be a Scorpio thing, right? Digging right into the truth. But Virgo is also very good at that as well. They can discern, like they smell something's out of sorts here and not quite right. And they'll just dig deeper until they get to it. So interesting. Phantom chroma. Well, the veil being thin right now makes sense. I've been seeing things out of the corners of my eyes. I guess that's why they don't call it the duvet. Sorry, bad joke. It's funny because I've been noticing things out of the corner of my eye here this morning. You might see me looking off because it seems like there's something flickering, and it makes me think that somehow the broadcast is flickering. But I don't know. When I look at it, I don't see it. So I don't know what it is, but I keep catching it out of the corner of my eye. And, that brings me to the next transit that's going on is as a part of this full moon. It really begins sort of today, moves in through tomorrow, and will likely even feel it the next day. And that is Mercury in a sextile to Neptune. So remember when we talk about the sextiles or squares or oppositions, we're talking about the relationship between the two planets involved. And the relationship of a sextile is one of sort of, sharing. They're not unfamiliar with each other's energies. They work well together. So the relationship is sort of a camaraderie. And they collaborate well, they co-create well together. And Mercury, of course, represents the mind and our communication. And Neptune represents that spiritual energy, that high spiritual, the veil. It even might represent the actual veil, and Mercury being able to pierce that veil in order to deliver the messages he picked up from the sun just a couple of days ago. Remember, I said back on Monday that this particular first 2 weeks of the month, we're going to be very much about Mercury and delivering messages from the sun to the planet. So the conjunction to the sun occurred in Taurus. So what are we building? And what are we manifesting? And what are our intentions? And that being carried on now to the other planets via Mercury. So Mercury via Neptune, or getting this message to Neptune. Well, Neptune's got to say hallelujah because Neptune represents intuition. It represents that imagination, right? It represents if we can imagine what the world might look like if we took it under our hat and we just decided we're going to do this, right? We're going to make this world change. We're going to move forwards. We're going to make sure everybody has enough. What would happen, right? It stirs the imagination and begins to create waves of creativity that allow us to, surf into some new areas and to maybe do some new things. I call it that it takes us on a magical mystery tour. I think that was from Scooby-Doo, right? We're going on a magical mystery tour in a van, going from one scary house to another and one scary situation. Really, all those things represent the world of the unseen and our ability at this point to in tune with it, to become inspirited by it, to be able to be informed by what is happening in the more liminal world, the part that's so not seen, right? And it's right here with us. So our intuition is highlighted at this point in time and increased as the veil thins with this kind of transit. As the veil thins at a full moon, we are in receipt of more information coming through our intuition or other ways of knowing through the clairs, maybe, right? Clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience. There is so many different diverse ways that information can be incoming, literally through dreams even, and a few of you are out there talking about that. So you may find over tonight and tomorrow more powerful dreams, more symbolic dreams, encoded perhaps with information that you will understand, and maybe you may not even understand it in your waking life, but it opens a doorway to some other form of knowing, some sensing that there's something deeper that you need to work with here, something magical about to transform or to change in your life. So I think this full moon is very spiritual. I mean, I wish I had a better word. It's very spiritual and very it is very shamanic in that, in its power to cause change, for us to be able to shape shift into new forms, to shift our reality. It's all right there, right? And it's tantalizingly close during a period of time like this. So all we have to do is reach out and bring that more into our awareness and into our daily lives. All right. Okay, now let me talk a little bit about the day in terms of the Pleiadian Earth energy, and then I want to pull a couple of cards for us for the full moon. The energy today for the Pleiadian is the 6 exploring energy. So remember 6, right now we're matching up with the day on the Gregorian calendar. The 6 is an energy of flow. And remember, this energy causes us to look at the obstacles that are there in our life and to find a way over, under, around, because like to be more like water. Scorpio full moon, water, being more like water and entertaining the flow, right? Moving through and around. Now, I want you to also understand that that full moon technically bridges into the 7 energy. And remember, the 7 energy of the day represents that gateway, that portal, where we're sitting exactly at the halfway point of the spiral of consciousness for that 13-day week. And where are we walking through the portal or not? So flow today may establish our ability to move around, through, or under the obstacles that are presented, letting them go, even if it's baggage and this is something old, just let it go. And then tomorrow with the full moon, being able to merge through into a new reality. So it's kind of interesting that those 2 energies that we have for today and leading us into tomorrow, because like I said, technically the full moon is tomorrow, but we may have to let go of some things today to flow around or through, or let go, in order to have the highest expression of that full moon. And exploring energy, Ben, in the Mayan calendar. And that was a representation of the reed and the reed's necessity to be able to be flexible enough to bend in a hurricane, or to bend with life and the forces of life, but not to give up, right? Not to break. So we have to have enough backbone and form to be able to stand the test of time, but we also have to be able to be supple and yielding, and to be able to go with the flow, to yield and give and mold, and be able to remold ourselves based on the circumstances that are happening in our lives. So the Pleiadian Earth energy today gives us the ability to just go with that, roll with the punches, go with the flow. All right. So let me check real quick on questions. And in the meantime, I'll get my cards out here for that. Yes, she says, wow, I'm seeing things too. That's Augustina. Sue is also having that happen to her. Deep communication coming Phantom Opera says Beatles, actually. Beatles. Why? There was something I said, right? The Magical Mystery Tour. That's funny because now I understand what you mean by that. At the time I was writing those words this morning, I was thinking Scooby-Doo. God knows why my mind was there. All right, so I'm going to pull us an animal card. That will be the representation for us, the animal that will help us through this full moon window, and kind of act as our guide, taking us on this literally what is a shamanic journey of transformation and transfiguration and morphing and shape-shifting. And the giraffe. One of my favorite animals is the giraffe spirit that says, see the big picture. See the big picture. Number 29, which is the number 11. Maybe if I pull it back a little bit, there you go. Scene 29, the big 29 is an 11, which is about illumination. How perfect for our full moon. When I drew it, it was in protection mode. So let's take a look and see what that card means. We haven't had this one in a while. Okay, it says, are you sticking your neck out too far, reaching too high instead of looking around you to see conditions on the ground? Your devotion to co-creating something new is admirable, but giraffe spirit is showing up to remind you that you have to look at the whole picture, not just those tasty leaves at the top of the tree. Perspective is necessary now, and that means checking in with what is going on around you and at your feet. Or perhaps you are ruminating over the worries of the world instead of paying attention to what you can do right now, where you are, to bring about the changes you would like to see. Align with your highest good and know that while perspective is important, transformation begins where you are. Do not get so far up in the clouds thinking about all the big problems that you lose perspective and forget to do your part, however small it may be, to start enacting change. For transformation begins with you. Like the universe just ordered this perfect card for us, the giraffe spirit. All right. Now, the reason I wanted to pull a goddess is because, I don't know, I'm just feeling very goddessy today. I think we're talking both Taurus and Scorpio are very feminine energies. And I just feel like the goddesses may have a message for us during this full moon, right? So let's do it. And I should have unpacked these earlier. You know, what's funny is that I sit down in the morning and I write everything I'm going to say, pretty much, or outline it at least. But then somewhere along the line, I come up with these other things that I want to do, like pulling these cards that just sort of came out of nowhere. But luckily we had the time to do that. And, ooh, we want a goddess card called Bronwyn. Bronwyn is forgiveness. There's Bronwyn. I don't know that we've had her before, but she's a beautiful goddess as well. And she is card number 7, which is a very high spiritual number. Over here. Bronwyn, forgiveness. And she was upside down as well, which means in this deck, which is also by Colette Baron-Reid, Goddess Power Oracle. And it's an alignment message that we're getting when we have a card upside down. We have an empowerment message when the cards are right side up in this deck, and an alignment message when they're upside down. So we have an alignment message that says, sometimes we unintentionally cause hurt or pain to others. Sometimes our motive really is to hurt. Now is the time for self-inventory and making amends. Doesn't that sound very Scorpio-like? Your alignment task is to be 100% accountable for your thoughts, feelings, beliefs, motives, and actions. You are not doing this, however, to experience forgiveness from someone else or even from yourself. It's to have the strength and fortitude to become accountable and take responsibility for your actions. In this way, neither guilt nor shame can take root in your heart. You can stand empowered and humble with your head high, no matter the consequences. You will always be the beneficiary of such an act. The goddess Bronwyn says deep healing comes from this kind of courage and respect. Wow, I think that's a great message for us also in the Scorpio full moon. All right, everyone, I think that is it for me this morning. Let me go one last look over here, make sure somebody didn't have a question. Amy, I love the goddesses too. Natasha, the fairies are popping up and coming out. They want us to have more fun when we can in life. smile, giggle, dance, dig, or they will help us have fun. Indeed. Maybe that's what those little magical things are we're seeing out in the periphery of our vision. All right, everybody, take care. Thank you so much for joining me. If you are new and here for the first time, please hit the subscribe button. I need to get to 1,000 subscribers so I can monetize this channel. And for my clear purpose intent here, that's exactly what I want to be able to do to help offset the expenses of, doing this work that I do. And you can help. Maybe send your friends here and ask them to subscribe. And also in this way, you can put a little bell memory reminder so that when I do come on live, you can get that notification. All right, everybody. Thanks so much. Take care and have a wonderful day. See you tomorrow.